You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Hallie Krebs.
Hey, I go by Hallie Cat as my glassblowing artist name.
Your glass blowing artist name.
Yeah, so it's a funny thing, kind of like as glass pipes, which is primarily what I make. They weren't always so legal, and I guess there's still kind of some gray areas um, about making glass pipes. But a lot of people who started blowing glass, mostly it started getting really big in the '90s. Had like a lot of kind of pseudo names for, because you wouldn't want to put your real full name on it in case there was any kind of mix up. So a lot of people kind of like play on what their real name is. So,
That explains why this guy that used to blow glass in my neighborhood was named Gumby, but I never really understood how he got Gumby from his real name Trevor.
right. Well, it's not always based off your real name, but people like to play around with that. Like my friend Nicole, her name's Nicole Berger, and she goes by Cold Burger. So funny things like that kind of work out, or you can just go like totally come up with some other alter ego that you like. But a lot of things, like a lot of people now just go by their real full name. You don't really have to lie anymore. It's pretty legal now.
Yeah, that's the whole factor of how legal it's becoming and how influenced it is now. We're seeing it spark at a giant increase too with glass blowing in general. Everyone's always associating it with like pipes and tobacco, which you're seeing a lot more of now. It's becoming legal, but also the fact that glass blowing is just an art form. And just depending on what you make is really what you label it as.
Yeah, definitely. I first was introduced to glass. We went on a field trip to Corning Museum of Glass in Corning, New York. I lived like maybe 40 minutes from there, in upstate New York. And we went there and I saw a demo. I was like, oh my God, like that is the coolest thing ever. Like, if I could ever do that, like, stop what you're doing and do it. But I thought
Is
it
that
was,
how you got interested in glowing glass in the first place? Is just by going to a museum as a kid and seeing it?
yeah, well, I wasn't really a kid. I was in, what was it? It must have been 10th grade in high school.
I was
So
picturing you like 12 years old with like a Powerpuff Girls lunchbox. Like, I'm ready to go try blowing glass.
no, if only that was me and horses though. I still am so obsessed with horses, and I was like that weird girl, like canter like galloping around. That was me all over.
I did that as a dinosaur. I used to just
Yeah.
randomly walk the halls and go, ah! Everyone's like, what
Yeah.
the fuck was that? I'm like, I don't know, man. It's my dinosaur screech.
It's healthy. It's really healthy to run around like
Look,
whatever you want
I
when you're
used
a
to
kid.
make fun of the kids that used to run down the hallways as Naruto characters, like with their arms like ninjas behind their back and go face
Yeah,
first and whatever. But
exactly.
those kids had the best thing about them, and they truly did not give two shits about what
Yeah.
anybody thought about them.
It's the new cool to just we should all just pick it up again. Just start running around like your childhood alter ego self.
Can you imagine just adults at like the age of 40 in business suits just running with their arms behind their back like ninjas? I don't know
Yeah,
what would
that'd
happen.
be great.
We're like, he's having a mental breakdown.
The other day it was so cold. I like walking wasn't fast enough and like running I started to but I realized a skip was a really efficient way to like get to the next spot, and it's really late at night. I work pretty late, and so I'm just like skipping at like 2 a.m. down the sidewalk. Freak.
She's just on a lot of drugs. Just don't talk to her.
In Philadelphia, isn't nobody cares. They're like, all right. You do you. Like,
I talked to my dad's friend who's a photographer. He's on one of my very first episodes, and he was like, "I love photography, and I love the aspect of graffiti." And we went into like this deep, meaningful conversation on graffiti for like 35 minutes. And he goes, "The best part was when I got off the airplane. As soon as you get off the airplane, there's literally a spray painted graffiti that says 'fuck you.' As soon as you get off the airplane." I'm like, "That's just wonderful." And he's like, "Yep,
keep it
that
humble.
yeah, keeping it real. I love it." But that brings into a weird question. If you I heard a lot of people say this. If you like are in the middle of a rain and you walk, you would think that you would get soaked more because you're out in the rain longer. But people say if you run, it actually gets you even more wet because you're running into the rain. But I'm like,
Mm.
it doesn't make sense.
I mean, I guess if you're going faster,
But
what
then
is the rate of speed over time divided by
over the velocity of me getting wet and soaked and
I squared? It all makes sense on paper.
I finally figured out that math equation my teacher was always
Mhm.
spouting off with the X's and the Y's.
Yeah, let me just pull out the calculator that I always walk around with, and I'll just figure this out.
So you're a professional glassblower?
Yes, yes.
Now, from we heard about your start, but what about like what do you mean by professional glass blowing though? Like what do you tend to specialize in?
Yeah, I mostly I make designs and I sell them and I take orders for like custom work sometimes, but generally I've just been trying to like kind of develop my own sort of brand of glass. And I do a lot of different things with my glass actually. Like I started out just making pipes and I apprenticed for a pipe maker and that's how I got into it. I always thought like from the Corning aspect, I was like, you have to go to a school and like, you know, be a part of an institution that does this. But then I realized there was like someone the next town over in a studio in like a renovated mill building and he was making pipes and I was like, well, that's cool. I smoke weed. I'm totally about this life. Sign me up. Like, I really just wanted to work with glass, but then I found out there was this amazing community of pipe makers, and it's really like it's its own kind of world, like for sure. In that,
It's one of the like probably most positive groups out there too when it comes to just the hobby aspect and just the art in general. We're seeing a lot of groups nowadays that are old school like beer culture groups, glass blowing groups, wood
yeah,
carving groups.
exactly.
They're
Yeah.
sparking up now because of how interesting and how people are starting to dive into it more. I think what was always weird about glass blowing to me was, first of all, like my only really initial experience was with it was when I was stoned off my ass and talking to a guy named Gumby, where I had never met him before. And my buddy's like, "We're going to this guy's house about an hour and a half away in the middle of a bunch of cornfields." But he didn't tell me we were going out into cornfields. He was like, "We're going out to my buddy's house." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, it's probably like 20, 30 minutes away at the most." No, we're
Where
like,
was this in Maryland?
yeah, this was in Maryland, but this was
Okay.
like to a part of Maryland where like the sun's going down now. There's a lot of cornfields and nobody's going to be able to hear me scream. So we go to this guy's house and I'm like, I've never met this guy before. I'm stoned off my ass. And at that point, you're just listening to what people are telling you what to do. Like, Rob, you got to open up the door to get out of the car. You're like, oh, yeah, that's what I got to do. And then I'm getting out of the car and I'm approaching this guy's house. And I'm like, so we're not walking up to his house though. We're walking to like a side shed. And I'm like,
Yeah, we're going to the right to the shed.
yeah, I'm like, so what are we doing? Like, he's like, oh, he's blowing glass right now. I'm like, okay, what's this guy's name? And he's like, his name's Gumby. I'm like, well, what the
Umby, don't worry about it, man. Just be
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, well, shit. All
Calm
right.
down.
And I'm like, we walk in here and there's this dude wearing welding goggles with like long ass blonde surfer hair, look like straight up out of something out of Woodstock or something. And
Good.
he's lighting a torch and blowing glass. And I'm like, whoa. And he's like, Guys, put your goggles on when you walk in here." I'm like, what fucking goggles? Like, I don't even know how to shut the door right now, dude. I don't even know how I got here. And I'm like slowly losing my shit. And then next thing I know, he's just like, I get up right next to his torch. He's like, "You want to see something really cool?" And he starts blending these pieces of glasses together. And first of all, creating different swirl designs too. I'm
Mhm,
staring at this thing, and the first thing that's going in my mind is, wow, it's red. It's really red.
mhm.
I wonder
They
what
gonna be
happens.
orange forever?
Yeah. Can I touch it? That's the first thing I start thinking that's going through my head. And, he's showing me all these things too. I mean, he definitely was, but he took off his welding glasses at one point, and I'm like, "Holy shit, I know you. You own one of the skate shops in Salisbury."
Likely story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
classic.
it's weird because, like, I truly did not understand what this realm and, first of all, positivity of this culture in general. I think it was a lot more stigmatized back in the day, like you were saying, just with people going under
Mhm.
pseudo names and stuff. But the idea was that whole community involved was a bunch of people that were doing something that was illegal, like an illegal drug or something. And it became a very, very sketchy and weird place to kind of talk to people. You saw a lot of people not giving real names, a lot of people attacking other people because they were under a fake name. And now we're seeing, since it's becoming legal, more people are open, more people are positive, more people are now being very, very helpful in these types of cultures as well.
Yeah, well, it's crazy now. Like I said earlier, I'm addicted to Instagram basically, but that is like a huge platform for the whole glass blowing community. And it's where a lot of, I mean, between Instagram and YouTube, you can, yeah, get a shed and a torch and a kiln, and you can pretty much teach yourself to how to blow glass now. And I mean, glass blowing for centuries, even going back to like Murano, like even different houses, different families. Like you were born into glass blowing and you weren't allowed to leave. And you they would like keep techniques as secrets. And it was very like secretive, competitive kind of world. And now we're seeing this whole behavior kind of change. Like there's still the secretive folks and the tech, but really everyone's just out there kind of sharing information and knowledge. And what I like most about it is you can kind of, it's between you and the torch, you know, and I guess how much gas you have in the tank, but like it's up to you and you alone to like make your fate in this whole thing. And like, you know, being a nice person and being the person you want to meet, you know, bringing together just like a better story than the one that's already been told. And I think it's just a little baby of an industry that's like kind of it's learning to walk now, you know, there's things happening, it's definitely changing. And
Well, this is the important paving time as well. Like, you don't want to stigmatize it so much or keep secrets so much in this growing industry, because of the fact is, once you start doing that, it starts becoming something that a lot of people can't get into. It starts becoming.
yeah, I mean, I definitely lied to my mom or withheld information for the first year I was making pipes because she's been so against smoking weed. And to this day, she'll be like, "Oh, yeah, that's a cool pipe." Yeah, I'm like, "Yeah, I worked on it for 2 weeks, you know? It just really did a lot of work slowly, every step, make it right." She's like, "Cool. You know what you should do is you should make like a candlestick holder. Wouldn't that be nice?" I'm just like, "All right, you're never gonna get this, but it's okay. I love you."
This is difficult as a glass artist that you must face. Like, the fact is, you tell anybody you blow glass for a living, they're immediately thinking that you're selling bongs or pipes outside of outside of your house or something.
Yeah, it's like, "Can you blow me a bong?" And I'm like, I'm like, "I can make you something out of glass just because I'm a glass blower doesn't mean blowing is the term you use to create something with it."
What do you
But
think probably upsets you most about the industry in general? Just how it gets labeled in a certain way. Like, if you tell someone, like, if a police officer pulls you over, what do you why are you driving out so late? It's like, I'm coming back from my studio. It's like, what are you, a competitive tap dancer? It's like, no, I'm a glass artist. They immediately go, are there any drugs in the car? You're like, no,
I'm
there's
gonna
no
start saying I'm a tap dancer. That's a good one.
salsa dance. Ha ha ha.
Ah, my most annoying, I don't know.
Like, the one thing you find about just the industry in general that people kind of look at that you think needs to be changed a little bit. I've heard the wide variety of answers, mostly when it comes to just labeling somebody as a stoner or something, just because you would enjoy a really good art form that's been kind of labeled and stigmatized in this world as being kind of like a stoner performance. Like, I know people that are glass artists that I've talked to that are pendant makers that like making that idea, the decoration aspect. I know people that really like their pieces to show, whether it's by doing pipes. I know people that do designs when it comes to just decoration in general.
Yeah, everyone finds their kinda specific niche. There's a huge, like, huge array of techniques and shaping and things you can kind of go down with to like have be your specialty. I mean, yeah, I mean, having people ask me like, "Oh, are you a pothead or a stoner?" And I'm like, "What kind of question is that?" I'm like, "I'm a human being and I smoke this stuff and it's great. Like, don't you do something every day that helps you out, you know?"
Yeah, like I like to read a book in the morning, and some people like to smoke pot in the morning. That's perfectly fine.
Anything, like drinking a beer, but I think the most challenging or like the thing that I get most in my head about, which I'll admit, is like being a female in a male dominated industry.
That is true. That is really weird.
It's happening in so many ways now. Like, as women become more empowered, there's more of these stories, and like, there's more and more and more female glass blowers. But I feel like there tends to be this precedent that it's like, oh, why don't you just make some small things, you know, or like, I'll build the walls and you can decorate it kind of thing. And
Why don't you make me a mermaid? It's like, well, how about
yeah,
I make you a
cool.
fucking pipe that you can
I
smoke all
want a
your
pink
wonderful.
one.
Oh, gee, yeah, God.
Like, oh, is that like too big for you or something to make? Like, or too big of a project, you know? And
Well,
I'm like,
this is actually pretty interesting because I found this out. I actually talked to a woman welder, and that's something you really don't see a lot of women welding. It's the same probably you see in the women glass blowing industry. There's not a lot of people when it comes to it's the whole male aspect of, oh, you're dealing with a torch and a fire and metal. It's got to be
yeah,
a guy associated thing. I'm like, look, I'm not a feminist, and I'm not a person that whatever you want to that whatever says that men do certain jobs and women's do certain jobs. I think it's been stigmatized for a long time. But let me tell you something. I've seen some work in a whatever you want to call a guy position or male position where women have definitely done a hell of a lot better.
yeah. I mean, that's an age old kind of, you know, male versus female kind of debate. But I think just the fact is, like, the history of this art form has been male. And I'm just working to, you know, kind of just really show up and run, like, regardless of what my gender is, you know? But I also feel like it's important to make things that are female, and whether or not that's like catching on right now, like I like to make my thing is like my kind of girlyish thing is I love like making glass buttons. Everyone was making beads for a while and I was like, "Oh, I'm like sort of late to that trend." Like trends happen so quickly. Every couple months there's like some hot new item to make. Everyone's making beads, and I was like, "I'm never gonna make it in the bead thing, but I'm gonna kill it making being the first person to make buttons. Like, that'll be my new knickknack kinda thing."
So what types
And
of buttons are we talking here? Like buttons for jackets and things?
yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's like a wearable sew-on pendant is the way I see it. So yeah, I've always loved, like, getting dressed up in fashion. It's like another side passion of mine, and, um I've always been great in a thrift store. So either I'll find like new items that I like or like curate older, like kind of vintage items, and um I'll put my buttons on it and like customize the button to the thing. And it's really just something I really like to do, but I've incorporated pipes with it now, calling them smoking jackets. So there's a specific like design pipe that matches like this cool curated coat that I found. Which is like my own weird kind of like off the wall sort of artistic sort of venture, I guess.
I've seen some of them. A lot of them look pretty interesting too. I like how you did the 420 drop thing too with them naming them after different brands of marijuana.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I learned a lot about weed and all the strains and everything. I picked my favorite strains mostly, but I got a better understanding of all the breakdowns when I did that.
Do you ever find that like you try and go and explore a little bit more about just glass artists in general, watching different ones or just going to conventions or something to kind of expand your own knowledge as well? I mean, you're doing a lot of kind of learning on the job and a lot of experience based things, but I feel like when you go and try and dive into a realm too, you follow some pretty good artists and just try and find some local ones too to see how you can kind of change your own flavor. Like we're talking about before when an artist creates something, you can copy that exact person's process, but you're never going to get the same result. You're going to get something completely different. I can guarantee you, I can steal Da Vinci's style and everything, and I could never create anything that Da Vinci would be able to create. You have to find what works for you.
Yeah, that was the draw to I did oil painting in school. I was an art major at University of New Hampshire and graduated in sculpture. But I definitely loved oil painting and I was almost an oil painting major, but around the same time as deciding which one, I started blowing glass and the glass and the sculpture all made more sense to go together.
Your
But
mom must have been.
oh my mom. But yeah, the thing that I love now, I've incorporated my love of painting with glass. So like I can pull the glass down really thin, so it's like we call them stringers because it's really like a thin millimeter length, like amount. You can draw with it, you know. You can use it like a pencil and draw an image. So I've been making these kind of glass paintings in the hopes that, well, because it's what I like to do, but each piece is genuinely going to be unique and one of a kind because by default that's like my hand in that painting and that stroke, like it's my own kind of hand. And if someone wants to come up and try to take that kind of aesthetic, like it's still always the ones by me are only ever going to be by me, you know, and I sign them and number them. So for a collector aspect to have things that are one of a kind, like, is the draw. Um,
What do you what like when you invoke your style into it? What would you say one of the most creative things that you try and do is like everyone's got something where like I started noticing like my friends that buy a lot of glass pieces like pendants and stuff. They're like, well, this is by this guy or that guy's wearing a pendant from this. Like, how do you try and incorporate that into your style too? Where if someone comes across your piece, you're like they would automatically know that it was yours. What would you say is that significant thing that makes you your style?
um, I mean, I've definitely just honed in on a couple key themes. Like, I have my painting stuff that's really pretty different. I feel like you can use these techniques to make like other kind of images, and people do all the time. But I really tried to harp on this kind of looser, painterly kind of aspect. Whereas a lot of times you'll see like more like a cartoon 2D kind of flat rendering, but I try to really invoke like a painting in it.
What do you usually type to like you're coming from a painter aspect, what do you usually like to paint? I know I can't paint bowls of fruit for shit, but I can paint a sunset pretty damn well.
Yeah, I really stick to the landscape because it works. It works really well with what I do and how I apply the image after. And I like keeping it broader and looser and really just like the impressionist kind of style is what impressionist, pointillism, post impressionist into like modernism sort of stuff is the realm of the art that I really enjoy. And what I like carry over. Like Van Gogh's my homeboy, you know,
I
like
love
he's my
that you said
favorite.
that.
I did a bunch of papers on him in school and
I really love
yeah,
that
and
you
he's
said
kind of
that.
like, isn't he kind of like everyone's favorite? I don't know, like
I
him
have
and
his painting
Picasso.
hanging in my studio right now. As I'm talking to you, I'm looking at a painting of Starry Night.
Yes, I've done a couple Starry Nights and we have this like UV reactive glass color in a couple shades, so it'll glow green or pink or blue. We have all these glow under UV effects. So I've done some Starry Nights where under a UV light, it'll all like light up and glow. So I felt like that was really cool application of that color.
Would you say that like your just knowledge just in art in general when it comes to coming from a painter's aspect kind of gives you a little bit of an upper hand just when blowing glass in general? Like not to be like, "Oh, I'm better than this," but more like the aspect of like when I watch film, my whole film kind of has been changed because I took filming in school. So when I'm watching a movie or something, I start noticing like, "Oh, he used a low angle here, he used a high angle here." I feel like when you start understanding more about art, like we're a lot with art critics or something, when they go into painting, they start finding that they have these types of knowledge or information in their head that's like, oh, if I actually did it this way, I could get a whole better effect when it plays out to the overall board behind it. And plus, when you analyze something like just by talking to more glass blowers, when I walk into like a vape store or something to get coils or something, I look at all the glass pieces. I'm like, damn, he used a type of imprinting there onto that to be able to reflect that image.
Hmm. Yeah, there's just so many techniques, and I mean, yeah, going back to the beginning of the question, whether art school helped me or not, basically, I think it has, but there's so many people making glass and uh, pipes specifically that did not go to college or art school or anything, and they definitely don't have the debt that I do, and we're kind of at a similar spot. Like, that's the cool thing about the pipes, though, is that you really can just it's been determined by, like, all these people who have created it. So, there are people who have the art school background, and like, also going back to, like, I'm based in Philadelphia, so a lot of people here have a serious education because there are at least 4 institutions that teach glass blowing in this area. Um, Salem Community College, Tyler, and yeah, there's more other places that I haven't fully gone to, but I learned up in New Hampshire and came down here because there is a huge hub of artists here. I work on a block with like 4 other glass shops, like all kind of nestled together. And I definitely came here to seek out like being around more artists that are like doing the same things that I'm trying to achieve, or artists that I've looked up to. Like now they're just like right down the road and whatever. I like get coffee with them sometimes. Like,
Surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals or just other inspirations as well. Like when you start surrounding yourself with people that do the same thing as you start coming up with more ideas and you get to see an area of creativity as well. I think a lot of times for people, we're really, really interested in something, but we never surround ourselves with people that are interested in that same thing. So then you never have an area of being able to express yourself or be able to communicate your just ideas in general. Which, like, if you go to a coffee shop and you're hanging out with other fellow glass blowers or just glass shop owners, you might come across something new you've never ever heard of before.
yeah. So I like really came and immersed myself. I've been in my first 5, I've been doing it for like 9 8 9 years now, but I just like went for it. Like threw myself in, always blue glass, always like now I'm like my only friends are glass blowers. The only people I talk to are glass blowers. Like I'm like now using the city in like other ways to like explore the city, doing other stuff. Like I have an interest in comedy and doing stand-up comedy, so I've been like going to some open mics and just meeting a different genre, like a different group of people because I've so immersed myself in only being around like glass people, or if I go out, it's a glass event. Like there can be more to life than just glass blowing, but my I've just been so immersed in it for a while, and it's definitely been good for me. I've made huge strides. I almost saw moving here kind of like doing more school. This is the amount that I like really dedicated all my time and life to it really. But that's kind of how I am, you know. I did that with horses, and then I had a back injury, so that wasn't really able to like be my profession anymore. And glass is the only thing in my life that's really consumed me like this, except for horses, and
Is that because horses are just so badass?
because 'cause they're awesome.
They're literally the only
You can
animal.
ride them, what?
They're the only animal that has a connection on a brain, like, mental level with a person, like, an emotional level. If you're not
Yeah.
emotionally sound, like, if you're not thinking right, you're 100% is not into that moment that you
I
are.
think camels and elephants, you can do it too, but
Look,
the agility and the amount of
a horse is the
you can
only
do with
animal look,
horses is crazy.
Hallie,
Yeah.
a horse is the only animal that will not ride right if you're not in the proper mindset for riding that horse. I have learned that the hard way,
Yeah.
trust me when I know. Now, when it comes to the idea though, with the most things probably beneficial that you pulled out of glass blowing, what would you say it would be? Like if you had to choose one thing, would you say it's the area of creativity behind it? Would you say it's just the amount of people that you've been able to associate with now?
I think it's people and growing up, or like growing into learning like how to work and manage myself as an artist and how to present my ideas clearly and effectively and communicating with people, but really like figuring myself out through the process of creating work that like sometimes I'm just like filling an order because I have to and I have to like pay a bill, but then like understanding the difference between that and making something I really enjoy and like and having that be received well is like the ultimate experience. And like I'm trying to kind of just slow down a bit more lately and make the pieces I really care about and you know, just spend more time on a nicer piece and see how that goes. Um
Do you find that with a lot more of just how popular pipes are becoming in the area of it? It's a lot about what you're seeing now is people just cranking out a lot of items rather than caring about the quality. It's more about quantity aspect behind it.
a little bit of yes and no. Like there's definitely been an influx of glass blowers, whether they're hobbyists or real professionals working to like make a whole brand or mark in the industry. It's definitely gotten a little oversaturated in that respect. So you like making production orders like of those like hand pipe spoons like is a whole job and a way of life and a way to approach this. It's like the old time division between like craftsmen and artists. There's two different approaches you can kind of go about it, or you can kind of mix the two. I feel like I do a little bit of both. I make items that I can take orders on, but then I do have items that are completely one of a kind. And um,
What would be the coolest thing you've ever created so far?
hmm,
Like one that you have an amazing story behind, like most memorable creation. Like I remember one time I added if you take a slice of bread, some pepperoni, and a slice of cheese, you put it in the microwave for 10 seconds. That's probably the most memorable thing I've ever created in my entire life. Like even having a kid would not compare to that.
well, there's definitely been moments like that when I just realizing maybe not so much in glass recently. There's definitely been some pieces like when I first like could make a recycler pipe, which was kind of just this past year. That was the most recent like super satisfying like aha moment because it requires like specific kind of dimensions and like it's kind of like a visual kind of math problem or like word puzzle, like a 3D puzzle sort of. And you kind of you have to have some uptakes into a chamber that will then drain down into a bottom chamber and recycle the smoke through the water and it just makes a really smooth hit, a smooth experience. And it's just coming from a background that I didn't have much schooling in. So I've just been picking up this information from my friends who most of which did go to school for it. Salem Community College is one of the only schools in the country that teaches scientific glass blowing, which later you can use this degree to become like a scientific labware glass maker. And it's very specific and it's made for, making equipment used in science experiments and all kinds of crazy things like that. But now that knowledge is being applied to like making these really complex kind of smoking devices. And it's really cool to it's like I put it on a pedestal for a second and then I really applied myself with some confidence in trying it. And it turns out it's like going a little bit better than I thought. And I actually really enjoy working this way. But yeah, like surprising yourself is like really rewarding. I remember back in college, I had transferred and I was still like in between horses and art. And I came in as an equine major, but still enjoyed my art classes. And I stepped away from this one like portrait bust, like just like from the neck up. But we spent 3 hour sessions sculpting from a live model. And on the last session, I stepped back and was like, holy shit, like I made that? Like, that's crazy. That's a lot better than I thought I could. Like, I grew up thinking like I couldn't draw, but then I had a class and they were like, this is how you draw. You don't just like approach it with like weird angles. You have to learn how to see things and be confident that like what you see in your head. And yeah, the biggest thing is really just like being able to think of something and draw it and really be able to make something that's like you're drawing in real life. Like bringing that into the world into 3D is like probably one of the most rewarding, coolest things that I like about my work. Um, is yeah, just turning ideas into reality. It's crazy. And I finally have the skills that I can achieve the visions. Like it's taken like years of learning like the language of glass to be able to speak fluently your ideas.
That's a good way of saying it too. I think with art in general, it's easy to be able to draw something and be able to do something, but be able to do it good too. I think there's a lot that gets mislabeled by it too. Like, oh, you have to have talent, you have to have this too. But there's also a knowledge basis on it too. There are natural people that are gifted to draw very, very well without understanding the full process of it too. But understanding the process of it never hurts. Um,
Mhm.
Finding more ways to, first of all, I took a lot of art courses mostly because it gave my ADHD a free outlet for creativity to be able to do whatever I want. If I wanted to draw something and have my brain wander or be able to paint an image, it was amazing, and I was very
Mhm.
glad to have some of those classes into my life. But when you start learning more about different types of especially with like if you want to say pastel art or something where you're doing painting in general, if you start looking at the different brush strokes, the different whatever gets incorporated into a painting, you start noticing a lot more detail and difference. I think the most I pulled out of that was I took an art history class. We mostly learned about types of art and how influential it is in our history. Fun
Mhm.
fact for you: did you know they didn't figure out until recently that those cave paintings where people were painting, stick figures of them killing beasts and stuff?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Lascaux Caves.
yeah, so for a long time, they thought that those were because they were documenting their history or they were storytelling, creating like kind of like a picture of a book on a wall or something, not really just either that or recounting kind of like a memory. And it turns out they actually, what they did was they lit a candle inside the cave and saw that the shadowy figures would flash back and forth like a moving picture, that realized that they were actually creating a movie. So what they did was there were certain areas of the cave, of this certain specific cave, I can't remember the name of it, but they found out that if they put candles in the areas where they were candles back then, that they used using animal fat and types of like wax stuff to light and be able to paint these pictures, that if they lined them up perfectly, relit candles in those locations, they found that it created a moving picture. And they realized that what they thought were them documenting their history was them actually basically doing a modern day or a old style version of like a movie.
Oh, cool.
And
Yeah.
learning that
That
throughout
yeah,
art history though.
that's super interesting because there's also like I've looked into like Plato's whole allegory of the cave as a concept of like, what you see and perceive as like your reality. And like in a similar way, like the shadows cast on the wall of the cave is what they perceive to like be their reality, but it's just shadows.
That sounds like some deep meaning shit, like when someone
Yeah.
puts a banana and duct tape on a wall
Mm,
and it's like, "This
nothing
is
like a banana and duct tape now to
this
really.
is this is art." And it's like, "How is it art?" He goes, "The banana represents the crumbling ashes of humanity, while the duct tape represents the glue that holds it
Yo, did you
society."
know there was multiple bananas in that project? Someone just told me that last the other night, that there was more than one banana and they just changed it out.
The last time I went to an art museum, I sat on one of the things of art, so that just shows you how far we can go with you can just create something.
Our friend, there's an artist, Matt Iskuki. He makes glass trash, really. He makes really cool, like, exact replicas. It looks like it's just a crumpled up Coke bottle, like, soda bottle, and I'll even, like, get one of the Coca-Cola wrappers, like, off a bottle and put it on the glass one, and he, like, was at Art Basel or Basel, and, had it, like, just at the top of a trash can or, like, close near a trash can, and people would, like, kick it and be like, "Oh my god, like, that is glass," or, like, go to throw it away, and it, like, buds in a different way, and, like
All right, I have 2 answers on that one. 1, another man's trash is another man's treasure. That's a good pun. And then my second one, I'm thinking from the money aspect of me, where I'm like, "That's 5 fucking cents. You just ruined 5 cents. You know what I coulda got at that with a recycler?"
Yeah, the thing about Philly, like, the whole trash situation in Philly is horrible, but you can really trust the homeless people to recycle because 'cause they're gonna get paid for it.
'Cause they fucking live there
They're
too.
getting paid for that shit, man.
"You just threw a can on my lawn, you asshole."
It's really horrible, and it's really bad. Philly's disgusting, but
The one really
Meyer is
thing I love
getting
about Philadelphia, though, is the graffiti aspect of it too. Like that's a art
oh, yeah.
form. That's an art form that's seen as trash. But I've seen people that do really good works of graffiti, and they also put it on the side of their building. Like people pay local
Mhm.
people to be able to like, I want you to spray paint my whole wall. You know, don't just draw a dick on the side of it. I want you to go all out and do like some really cool lettering. You get to really see it take off in that manner.
Oh yeah, there is a Philly mural arts program where they commission spaces to be painted, but we had a really fun thing in our studio. Like our studio door opens to an alleyway and there was just this big blank wall of like a warehouse building and we used to be able to spray paint whatever we wanted and like if you put more work into something, like the buff crew would come through and like so long as nobody had like done a real tag over it, like they would leave your like real work up. We had one of our other glass blowers made like a really beautiful mural and well we had two times of great mural like life back there. um, but eventually, like, tags came in and parts of it got taken away, and then eventually, like, it all had to get buffed out, which was a bummer.
East Side ponies, yo.
Yeah. I
Hell
don't
yeah.
know what that means.
I don't know. You're a fan of
Like, yeah.
horses.
Sounds good.
Well, when it comes to the worst thing you've probably ever created, not really just the idea behind it, but more like it's been such a struggle to try and get it to happen. It seemed like it was your worst experience, like something breaking. What would you say that would be?
Oh my god. I went through this really bad it was like a phase. I would, like, finish a whole piece, like, a whole sculpture, and I'd get down to like putting what's called a ring seal in. Well, the ring seal actually went fine, and then you have to attach the part that you put the bowl into, the female attachment. And I would get to like the end of like 3 days of work on this. It's the last move of the piece, and I had like a really bad head game. Like much like horses can tell your vibe, like I really feel like the glass can, and if I'm going into something all stressed out and nervous and like rigid or whatever, you're kind of gonna fuck it up. You're gonna induce a crack, but also there's all like the skill in setting things up. I was at this time where I was really ambitious about making these pieces, but I really should have like taken more time just practicing this seal and on other shapes too, like going back on it now, and I do those now. I'm like, this was a big ask, of me to like do this kind of move on this setup at like 3 years in. And now I go back at like 7 years and I'll do one. I'm like, yeah, this is way easier. But I had to kind of stop making that piece for a while and just slow down, break it down, and like I took a whole break off of doing ring seals, that specific move for, at least a year and a half and just figured out like another way. I started doing like a removable down stem which is kind of like the bong where you can take it in and out of the piece and it's not fixed into the piece. But there's always like a way, but at that time I was like losing pieces and I was like, this sucks. Like this is horrible. And also like I was planning for all that time and money to like pay like to fill in order to pay these bills and then all this money is wrapped into this stress of creating something that you're supposed to be stress free making. It gets pretty hairy pretty quick. So breaking it down and going back to like making smaller pieces, like you kind of have to go through those phases is what I've realized. And just kind of be kind to yourself. I definitely like beat myself up a lot and I'm my own worst critic, but you can also be like your biggest supporter and like thinking the opposite way. Like now I really try to be like, it's gonna be great. It's gonna go the best way. Keep it positive. Like don't invite those like negative experiences back in because they were experiences so you can learn from them, you know. And once you learn that lesson, that door can close, you know.
Well, sometimes, like, even taking a step back from creating something as well gets you a whole nother idea or way of tackling it to be able to handle it too. I don't know how many times I was a little kid and I used to like freak out because I couldn't beat a video game. One in particular, there's a game called Spyro. I don't know if you've ever heard of the game Spyro.
I think it's familiar, yeah.
Okay. I used to get so upset where I had to take naps when I was like 4 or 5 years old because I could never get past a certain level. I have not played that game in over 20 something years. I played that game when they remastered it, like I think 2 years ago. I beat the level I was stuck on as a little kid and never passed. I spent like a month on it and never got past it. I beat it in 5 minutes. I literally opened up my door and I was like to everyone in my family, I was like, "Am I retarded?" And you heard the occasional like, "Yeah." And then you heard
Mm-hmm.
someone go, "No, you were just a kid at the time and you didn't know how to you understand things
You're not
now."
supposed to say the R word, dude.
Oh, whatever, man. They used to do something back in the day where they said mongoloid idiot. That
Oh,
sounds 1,000. They used to put that on people's birth certificates if you were born like that. I don't know what they say now, mentally disabled, mentally challenged. That's becoming a thing too. I also
say all this stuff.
I also didn't know that apparently some people find person of color more offended than saying colored person. I don't I don't
Oh,
know anymore. It's the same thing why I reach out to people now and on their thing it says he, she. I'm like, what are we saying? Are we saying you, what are- or her and she? That's what they say, her or she. That's what you can call them as. I'm like, can we just be people?
well,
Can
I
we
think
talk?
pronouns are definitely a relevant thing that people need to kind of acclimate themselves to. I've had to, but it's really like a real
Obviously,
thing
yeah.
that's happening. And to have that as part of your reality is already hard enough, you know, to live with. And if we can't like adjust how we see things a little bit, like
Well,
I
look,
think it's
I've
just
talked to I've
evolution
talked to plenty
happening.
of
And
transgender people, Hallie. I've had a few on my podcast, and I've
I'm
talked to
like,
them
hold
about it.
on, trigger warning. I need a safe
Yeah,
space to talk about this.
there's an understanding for sure. I am a completely 100% open person, but I have encountered the people that are only doing it because they feel like they just want to be able to get a pass or get a whatever, just because they feel like they can, which truly discredits them. I actually had a transgender person on my podcast, and I was telling which is a he now. I was telling Dakota, which is the fact he's been taking male hormones for 11 months, but I was like, correct me if I'm wrong, correct me if I slip up or say something. The thing is,
Mhm.
though, even he mentioned it does a major discredit when people are going, call me Bill. Oh, wait, now I'm Jackie. Oh, now I'm Bill again. Now I'm Jackie. In a matter of a 10-minute span that you're having a conversation with, which is where it's like when you let in the door for a pass or a certain thing, people start going out of control with it just because they have the ability to. And
Mm.
that's when it starts to become very, very discredited. But to hop off of the fucking transgender wagon and the gender thing
I
in
think anything can get like that though, you know. Anything you're trying to make a change, someone's gonna put a one over on it. You know, there's always gotta be someone that's gonna ruin it for everyone else who's really legitimately trying hard to like do something differently and be better, you
Yeah,
know?
you'll come across that in the comedy scene. You gotta, if you talk about doing a little bit of stand up or just diving into the open mic night in general. A
Yeah.
lot of times you got to be careful what you say now. How many comedians get backlash? Like Dave Chappelle was probably one of the very few comedians that literally probably got the less backlash to his comedy special that came out. He attacked fucking everybody, but he was true in everything he was saying. The reason
Right.
why,
Yeah. It's an art. It's an art to be able to say things and talk about things and be received like correctly. And I realized I needed to do more comedy in that comedy setting where people are open to having things. You go into a comedy show, you have to have an open mind that these are jokes. These aren't exactly this person's opinion, and they might be saying it as a satire of the people who are like that, like bringing attention to that kind of issue and being like, hey, do you think this is okay? Like, laughing at something takes its power away is what I feel a lot of. But I realized I needed to go be in that comedic space because I was making jokes in like my day-to-day life and people thinking I'm serious, and I'm like, "Ugh, I just need an outlet for this. Like, I need a safe space to just be an asshole a little bit with like other people who are ready to like receive a joke and not take it personally." But at the end of the day, you can be a comedian. There's always going to be someone who's going to be upset, and you can't by any means please everybody, and that's not what it's about, you know?
well, also when you're going to a comedy show, you have to understand you're paying for jokes, whether they're funny or not, or whether you got to
Take a
understand.
joke.
Yeah, take a joke.
Take a joke. Understand it's joking, but you can't be berating people outside of that context, outside of that environment, because then they are really gonna think you mean what you say. Because generally people should mean what they say, you know?
Yeah, there's a general shift in the comedy field now in general in the past 5 years. You're starting to see comedians make fun of themselves over making fun of somebody else because making fun of themselves is okay.
Yeah,
You're
but self-deprecation isn't funny. I don't
yeah,
agree with that either. Like, just to be like, "Rah, rah, rah, I suck at this, haha." It's like, no, it's not funny, dude. You should like figure that out. Like,
it's
this
it's a
isn't your
shift.
therapy session.
Sadly, the shift is turning into that because it's safer to make a joke about yourself rather than crack
That's a
a joke
good
on
point.
something.
I haven't thought about that as that.
You're talking to a
That's
person
interesting.
that
Yeah.
watches so many comedy series and everything that he watches on Netflix besides the occasional murder documentary for some reason at two
Mhm.
o'clock in the morning that seemed the most interesting. But when it comes to just comedy in general, it's this idea that we need to understand that there is a point where someone is being serious and when someone's joking. I use humor in my everyday life, and people are like, "Are you being serious?" I'm like, "No,
Right.
I'll let you know when I'm being serious." Like I like to joke around a lot because we live in a world that is very serious all the fucking time. And it's like,
Yeah.
why can't we just take 2 minutes just to laugh or crack some stupid joke that doesn't mean anything and just keep it there? Why do we have to go so far with it?
Yeah, there's just something satisfying in making a connection. You know, it's like, oh, I link these two separate things together somehow. And it's definitely ridiculous to think like that is a real thing, but I just made a little jump there. And that's what I'm laughing at. Like, take all the other stuff aside, but not everyone's equipped to do that, you know?
I just got a really good pipe idea for you to do.
Oh, yeah?
You should craft a joke on the side of your pipe, and then as the smoke clears from the thing, it reveals the joke.
uh, I'll get back to you on that. I
Damn
don't
it.
know how that's going to happen.
All right, then just do one in the shape of a horse or something.
Oh, okay. Like what I was gonna do anyway? You got it. I'll do that.
But it is cool to see though, like with glass blowing in general. I think we're seeing this giant culture that is turning into something beautiful at the start, and I really hope it continues to go that way too. Because a lot of people like yourself, a lot of people that choose the humor side of things, and also choose to kind of be real. And first of all, create an open kind of thing for it as well, never closing anybody off of it. We have so many things nowadays that are so closed off, whether it's comedy, whether it's that kind of the bars are kind of put up where it seems like you have to be doing it forever until you're actually able to be meaning anything into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's too much of that already. I don't want to see another thing get thrown into that pile. I want to see it become creative. I want it to see it be awesome. And I also want it to be less kind of taboo or stigmatized so much too. Like I don't fucking like being around a lot of the people that deal in that group because a lot of the people that deal in that group aren't being themselves. They're being like, my name's
Yeah.
420 Chick 2020. I'm like, well, what the fuck is your real name? Well, I don't do my real name. I'm a Puff Puff Daddy Master. I'm like, well, I'm scared.
It's not all like that, man.
That's what I'm saying. Let's create
You
an
can find real people. They're out there.
that. And hey,
Um,
I found one with you, didn't I?
I hope so.
I hope so. You
I
told
think
me
I'm real. I'm not a robot. I have to declare that every time I download an app. So that's a
Dude,
start.
that's the
But I'm
only
working
thing.
on that.
Look, that's the only thing you should get on your census test. It should not ask me my race. It shouldn't ask me my gender. It
Yeah,
should
just
just ask,
not a robot.
I'm not a robot or I am a robot. And one day someone's going to check that fucking robot box.
Yeah, a robot will.
Well, Hallie, thank you so much for coming out and doing the podcast too. I want to give you here a minute at the end to kind of promote your content.
My concept, my
Your
whole
content, your content,
content. Sorry.
content
Oh, okay. All right.
with
Well,
four T's. With
my
4 T's.
Instagram is at Hallie Cat Glass. Um, my Etsy is also under Hallie Cat, and you can pretty much use those to get a hold of me and chit chat and see my work. I keep it pretty live on that Instagram. I'm on there all the time.
Do you want to shout out that Twitter or maybe a Pinterest?
I don't have either of those. I'm an IG purist. Maybe I'll start other social media platforms, but
I had someone toss out
I'm
a link.
so busy, it's already consuming me. Like I need less social media and more time to create.
I had someone toss out a LinkedIn profile at me. I was like, "Did you just say LinkedIn?"
Oh
They're like, "Yeah,
wow.
you can follow me on Pinterest too." I was like, "Holy shit, we got a Pinterest."
Damn. I probably should. It's not wrong, you know.
You can find any of my links at singlecougarsmeat.com or
Oh.
where farmersmeat.com. I like
Oh,
those.
you're right. I do have a farmers only profile. I could plug that too.
You
It's
need to
not
write a
just for farmers.
you need to
Did
write
you
a
know?
joke on that one. Jeez. Like I saw one that was like where jewishpeoplemeet.com. I was like, wait, hold on a second. Hold on
Oh,
a
there's
second.
everything to meet.
Where Trump
Where robots
supporters
meet is a thing. How do they download the app if they're a robot? I don't
where
get it.
where Trump supporters meet.com.
Ugh, Christ. It's like the CNN pages.
Oh my God. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and stay tuned for another episode of Out of the Blank.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun talking to you.